welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Playbook. This is episode number 62, and this week's guest is Dennis Castellano. Dennis, how are you doing today?
Good, Joe. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of like to start off with the audience, kind of giving everybody's history, backstory and everything, Dennis. So the first question is, what made you decide to become a realtor?
27, almost 28 years ago, I bought a rental property in North Tampa. And I started, playing around with that. And I said, you know what, maybe I should just get my real estate license just to have it. So I went and I took the test and did everything that I had to do, got the license. And then I started practicing like part-time for, I don't know, maybe 4 years. And then it got to a point where I couldn't do that part-time and do like a regular job because the real estate got too busy. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay. I said, let me go into this full-time. So I went into it full-time, and here I am, like 27 years later. I started in the residential market, and I learned that first. And we had a commercial guy in our office, and he told me, he says, I tell you what, he says, you handle all of my residential stuff, and I'll teach you the commercial market. So I kind of stayed behind the scenes, kind of learned a little bit about it. And one thing led to another, and we eventually left that office and started doing commercial property as well. So
that's awesome.
So I do both.
Okay, commercial and residential.
Do both, yeah.
Awesome. And then prior to real estate, so I know you kind of been licensed for a while, 22 years, was it?
27 years.
27 years licensed. And when you were kind of taking jobs prior to doing it full time, what's your background? Kind of what were you working prior to going full time into real estate?
I started really at 15 years old in the grocery business.
Okay.
And just kind of worked my way up. Started managing stores. And I did that for quite a while. Took a job with Delta Airlines for a while. Could never get on full time out there. Seniority, the highest seniority was 40 years, and the person with the least seniority was 11. So I really didn't have a chance unless I wanted to move up to New York or something. And at that age, I didn't want to do that. So it's mainly the grocery business.
Okay.
But I mean, when I got my real estate license, I was actually working for a major door company as like middle management, and like I was saying before, I was doing the real estate part time, and I was trying to do that job as well, and it got to be too much.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've got to, I need to move on.
Yeah. It's kind of those things where like most people, you kind of want the steady paycheck. It's the fear of going straight commission, but it's almost like you got to take that one step back, go 100% in to kind of get those 2 steps forward.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then a lot of things that I like to do is kind of pay attention to every agent's background, especially successful agents such as yourself who gets into production at a rather quick pace and, continues to build upon that. From your kind of track record, what I'm hearing, grocery store, Delta Airlines, door company, middle management, handling the sales, managing the grocery stores, starting at a young age of 15. It sounds to me like a lot of it's customer service oriented. And I want to kind of let you know, my question would be, what from your past experiences from your, prior businesses you were involved in gave you a skill set that helped you to correlate into real estate and maybe accelerate your learning curve and get into sales at a quicker process?
Well, in those businesses, the grocery business, you're always trying to take care of the customer. You're always trying to please them. Mm-hmm. And what I learned is that when you tell somebody that you're going to do something, you do it.
Stand by your word.
And you stand by your word. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I learned from a customer service standpoint. And I always like working with people. Mm-hmm. I've always liked that. I always like the interaction, and to me that's fun.
Yeah.
And that's pretty. I mean, that's yeah.
And they probably teach you, communicating with people, especially nowadays. A lot of texting, email. There's still, I feel real estate is still a belly-to-belly business, shaking hands, kissing babies, face-to-face interaction.
You're 100% correct, because when I started in this business, and especially the commercial business, the one thing that I learned from my partner at the time, Tom Edrington, was pick up the phone and call.
Make the calls.
Make the calls. And to this day, I mean, things have changed, obviously. I mean, we use a lot of text and phone and everything, and I do that too, but I always remembered that lesson, if you will, of picking up the phone and calling somebody.
Yeah.
And when you know something, you let them know right away. You don't make them wait.
Yeah, 100%. And then try to, being that, that advocate for them, solving those problems, giving them advice, and then helping them almost navigate them to their destination of home ownership or selling a property.
Absolutely. 100%.
So the thing that's unique with you, Dennis, obviously doing residential and commercial, most of the agents here at our brokerage, well, pretty much all the agents at our brokerage are going to be residential, except for you. You handle the commercial here within the brokerage of 54 Realty. For the audience out there, maybe there's an agent who's thinking about getting into commercial real estate, or maybe there's, a commercial agent who's thinking about possibly doing residential, because I'm assuming, commercial, bigger sales, but probably less frequent than a high producer on the residential side.
Right.
What would be some of the nuances? What are some of the differences, since you're kind of navigating both waters? What are some of the differences from the residential side to the commercial side?
The biggest difference, residential deal is more of an emotional deal. Mm-hmm. A commercial deal, it's I always use the phrase, it's a function of numbers, and that's really what it is. For somebody that wants to get into, a residential agent that wants to, maybe learn the commercial side, I highly recommend just working kind of with somebody or under somebody.
Like a mentorship?
Yeah, to learn the lingo, the ins and outs of it. Because I can tell you, when you get on a phone with another commercial agent, an experienced commercial agent, they'll know in the first 10 seconds if you know what you're talking about.
Well, and I can tell just from us negotiating leases here that we've rented from property on the commercial side and buying buildings. There's different things on the commercial side, nuances that goes with the functionality of the business itself. For instance, I didn't know what an LOI was until getting on the commercial side, the letter of intent, because on the residential we don't use that. And on the flip side, I work with a commercial agent who put his client in a vulnerable position, because when they did the as-is contract, they were thinking the as-is inspection contingency worked as an LOI and could get out any time. And it's certain nuances and learning how to navigate through those contracts that are a lot more different than they would seem to be alike.
Yeah, an LOI, I mean, going to an LOI, I mean, we were talking before we went on. I did one this morning, and it's non-binding, but it's kind of laying out the terms or the basis for the terms. But yeah, I mean, when you get into an actual lease, that's a whole different ballgame.
So let's talk about the LOI. I mean, now obviously every state's going to be different when it comes to law, and I know a lot of times, unfortunately, homeowners, or I should say home buyers, might use on an as-is contract that clause to get out of the contract even if nothing's wrong with the property. On the commercial side, when it's LOIs, is it more like, I don't know if you know a percentage offhand, but how often does somebody not follow through with that if both parties agree to terms?
The deals that I've been involved with, when you have an LOI, and I mean you agree to terms, I would say that 90 to 100% of them, go to lease. I mean, I haven't ran into that, much myself. I'm sure it happens though.
And I was thinking that too, though, because you're also dealing with a, much more analytical, sophisticated buyer. Yeah. They're agreeing to terms, no nonsense, no emotional ties to it. Is this the right property? It's not, hey, the numbers work, this is what we need it to do. If I'm looking at strictly for an investment opportunity, am I getting the cap rate? Am I getting the return I'm looking for? Right. So as long as that is met in the terms, and it's usually just kind of moving along and making sure everything else checks out.
That's correct. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it kind of sets the basis for the lease.
Okay.
But I've never really experienced, though, in the past, once you kind of agree to an LOI, I would say most of mine have gone to lease.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And then as far as like contracts, like let's talk about selling the building, not just doing the leasing aspect. Mm-hmm. When you're going for a commercial building sale, I know residential typically, if it's cash, sometimes you'll get those 2 to 3 weeks, but historically it's a 30 to 60 day contract, more on the 30 side. What are we looking at on the commercial side, Dennis?
Commercial side, 60, 90, 120.
It all depends.
Yeah, it just all depends. The due diligence is longer.
Okay.
It's definitely longer. 30 to 45 days, sometimes 60 days. It just kind of depends on exactly what type of a property it is. But that's typical.
And do you feel that that's because it's more property specific or because it's more of an audit of the financials, right? If you're buying a hotel, for instance, and you want to make sure the numbers work, you're probably cross-examining the books, getting your accountant review.
Yeah, I mean,
attorneys, all that
it's
stuff.
more of an audit of the financials. But, I mean, if it's, say if it's I don't know, a land deal or something like that. I mean, you've got environmental stuff that you have to do, soil samples and stuff. It takes a little bit a longer time period to get those reports, and you have to review them and that sort of thing. But it's more in depth. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
More in
absolutely.
depth.
I could definitely see that.
It's not just the inspection of the building itself.
And the appraised lady is going to appraise
Yeah,
out.
is it going to appraise out? That sort of thing. I mean, there's a little bit more to it.
All right, and then as far as, just with your tenure here with us, I've seen you do several transactions from selling a daycare business with the existing building, selling a mobile home park, selling large parcels of land that people plan on developing. When you're doing that on the commercial side, like to me, who's never really sold commercial, it seems a little bit overwhelming because, like, gosh, how do you learn the nuances of all this business? So is it literally you having to do a deep dive to learn the business, or is it just like, hey, the business doesn't matter, you're just getting the financials and plugging and playing and delivering it?
It's like, Joe, it's a little bit of both, but I know we were talking a couple weeks ago, and it takes a while being in the business to kind of learn the different types of commercial deals. I mean, you've got multifamily, you've got office, you've got retail, you've got land, like you just mentioned, and so you kind of have to do some of those over the years, and
Just by experience, it sounds like just getting your hands dirty doing the work.
Yeah, it's more experience. It really is. Like I mentioned before, when I first started, I kind of was like behind the scenes. My partner, real estate partner at the time, he was kind of the front guy. I mean, he did all the talking and everything like that. I listened, watched, and kind of learned the backside of it a little bit. And it's more experience, Joe. It really is.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the key with, any successful career, especially if you're kind of getting service oriented, you got to kind of learn your craft. But I think on the commercial, there's just a lot more you got to learn than the residential. So there's probably, obviously, I know agents who specialize in residential strictly, agents who specialize in strictly commercial, and usually, obviously, the top performing commercial agents tend to make more than top performing residential. But there's a lot more learning, a lot more that comes with it than on the residential side.
And the deals, again, they take longer.
Yeah.
I mean, these residential deals, I mean, you can turn them in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Commercial deals, it's not normally like that. I've seen it happen before, but it's certainly not the norm. I wish it would happen more frequently like that.
So let's take a trip down memory lane. Let's go 27 years back. You're getting into real estate. You can talk about, if this is right. When you got in real estate, you were doing it part-time, or maybe when you jumped on a full-time basis, you can answer either or. But what's the one thing you didn't expect or maybe took for granted when you started real estate?
I didn't expect doing it part-time to get as busy as I did. I kept, this is crazy, I kept a separate book at the company that I was actually working at, a separate real estate book. And it got to a point where I was showing properties at night, and like every night. And so what I was doing is I had to keep this book of, everything, my appointments and everything and all the information in there. I would go at lunchtime, get in my car, get on my phone, and set appointments. And they were kind of wondering, why don't you ever want to go to lunch with us? They kept asking me, hey, let's go to lunch, this, that, the other, and I make these excuses, and I was doing that because I really had to use that time to
Work.
to work, and I didn't expect that. I really didn't, but it seemed to work out, and I enjoyed it a heck of a lot more.
That's awesome.
I really did.
No, that's great because I remember from the beginning, you essentially got the license just to almost sounded like for your personal use.
Yeah, that's it.
And then,
That's it.
right out the gate, now you're getting all these people calling you. being like, hey, you've had some success yourself buying your own rental properties, home properties as well, selling them. And they're probably seeing that track record. Now you got people calling you like, geez, I didn't expect to get this busy.
In the broker that I worked for at the time, Bob Piccarelli, had been in the business for many years. And he kind of took me under his wing and kind of showed me the residential side. And I mean, he also had a management side to that office as well. Didn't have a lot of time for the sales side. So a lot of that stuff he said, hey, Dennis, can you take care of this for me? Can you work this deal for me? And then one thing kind of led to another, and it just kind of started to
snowball from there.
And then I'm like, I got to make a decision here, because I can tell you right now, I can't do both. I mean,
right.
At some point.
Yeah, it's okay in the beginning, but if you're going to make a career out of real estate, I've never seen too many agents, unless they're doing it for the personal use, or a small handful of people, continue to do it a part-time basis, except for that initial, nowadays 3 to 6 months, just to kind of ensure they have the funds to make that straight commission leap.
And going back to what you said earlier, you got residential and you got commercial agents. Most commercial agents don't really want to have anything to do with residential. They just strictly do commercial.
And on the flip side, honestly, most residential agents shouldn't dabble in commercial unless mentoring with somebody, because I've seen so many things go south when they try it themselves without experience.
Yeah, you can get yourself in kind of a
pickle. To say the least, pretty quickly. So one interesting thing you were alluding to, briefly discussing kind of before we started the podcast, you were telling me, hey, you're kind of ready for the other shoe to drop, for instance, for, residential slowing down a little bit, sales are down, prices slightly declining. But on the commercial side, you're saying you're still kind of as active almost as you were.
On the commercial side, I am. I've been involved in a few different leases here, and they've kept me busy. I would imagine at some point, though, it will slow down a little bit. I mean, you've got the inflation, and that didn't seem to affect anything. I mean, it was just blowing and going, even with the inflation. But now the problem that you have is you have the cost of debt with the interest rates going up. And that in itself, I'm sure, will affect things like development and that sort of thing. Read an article, I don't know where it was, CoStar, somewhere the other day, talking about multifamily development slowing down a little bit, and which is hard to believe, especially here where we're at in the Tampa Bay market. But slowing down a little bit, and that cost of debt is affecting that.
I wonder too, what areas that is, because I was reading an article about short-term rentals. A lot of short-term rentals, such as like your Airbnb type properties, are going full-term rentals now because with everything going on, not that many people are vacationing. They're going back to full-term rentals, which is opening up more properties, and rental rates they're expecting to decline a little bit. So I wonder if that has anything to do with it. With more properties coming to the market, maybe there isn't quite such a demand to develop all the multifamily housing.
I think all of that stuff just comes into play. I really do. But I mean, the cost of debt, I think, will affect. It's going to affect
commercial
things. Yeah, I really do. Fortunately,
hasn't yet.
It hasn't yet, and I hope it continues. And
I hope so too.
But
reality.
Anyway, yeah. But it's been good.
That's awesome.
It's been fun.
So then, what's one thing right now, obviously, as the market kind of shifts to residential, commercial, you're expecting it to possibly shift in the near future due to the cost of debt. What's one thing that you're all in on doubling down to ensure that you can have, maintain the same level of success, or even grow your business, have a greater level of success than you had in these good markets?
Taking all the clientele that I have and staying in touch with them, making the phone calls, picking up the phone and calling them. Not just shooting them a text or an email, picking up the phone and calling the clients, in my database, letting them know that that I'm still here. Asking them,
that's so critical.
I mean, asking them, are you looking for anything now? I mean, what have you bought in the past year, 2 years? If there's anything that I can help you with, I think that's critical. I really do.
And the thing is, it's so simple yet so neglected upon most real estate agents. It's picking up the phone, being that advocate for them, just asking. You can get that kind of commission breath salesy. Hey, do you know? You just call kind of what I call like for a greedy call. You're looking, hey, do you know anybody looking to buy, but not really caring about the person. Yeah. But I know your phone calls are more like, hey, how you doing? Kind of doing a checkup, almost like an item of value. Is there anything I can help you with? Not just always, handout, but you're kind of depositing, just showing your value and kind of being a resource for them on any questions that they might have.
And that goes back to the customer service aspect that that we talked about. You want to try and take care of these people. You want to be there for them when they need you. You want to go over and beyond. And for example, the LOI that I drew up this morning for my restaurant client, he normally has a LOI that he uses, and they got in a pinch last night. He wasn't able to do it, and he said, "Hey, can you jump on it? First thing in the morning and have it to me by such and such time." I had other things that I had to do, but I made sure that I took care of that.
Prioritized.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just very important.
100%. So right now, obviously, they're expecting 25% of the realtors that are licensed and practicing real estate in the market to kind of be down 25% of the real estate population, but come February. There are still some agents getting licensed, newly licensed agents, not as much as obviously we saw during the boom and the rush. But what's one bit of advice that you give for newly licensed agents, or maybe it's an agent struggling, not having the level of success they're looking to achieve? If you were to give them one nugget of information, what would that be?
Find an experienced, a successful, experienced agent. See what they're doing.
So I'm a shadow.
Shadow them, and do what they do on a daily basis, or at least try it and see if that works for you. It obviously works for them, and they're successful in doing it.
Absolutely.
So try and take some of those nuggets and and apply them to your business. When I came over to 54 Realty, after being in the business for a long time, you're kind of set in your ways, and you think that you know everything, and you don't. You're always learning. And I know that we would have these classes, and I believe Chris did a buyer consult class. She does that occasionally. And I said, I mean, should I go to this? I mean, and I said, you know what? I forced myself. I said, I'm going to go to this. I want to see, out of all of this, if I can pick out, just one or two things, or just how she might do something. And I thought it was very beneficial. I mean, you pick up little things that successful agents like herself are doing, and that'll help you. But you can't be set in your ways and like I'm going to do it this way, and this is the way that it's going to be done. You kind of got to open your mind a little bit and embrace what some of the other successful people are doing, and I think that's
100%. And I think you touched on 2 points. One, emulate before you innovate. I think a lot of agents think they could do everything better before even kind of doing the blueprint.
Yeah.
Hey, if somebody's having success, you want to have success. One of the good things for me is I'm like, hey, I know I'm not the smartest person. I know I'm not having success in my life, so I'm vulnerable. I'm kind of self-aware. I know they're having success. I'm just going to do what they do, right? And then as I get to a level of success, then I can continue to grow and expand upon that. But let me get to there first. I think a lot of agents will get in their own head and they're like, hey, they'll see the plan and they're like, I can do it better, but not understand kind of everything that goes into it because they don't have the experience. The other thing you touched on, which I think is a critical component, is every time I've attended the same training 3, 4, 5 times. And every time I went to it could be the same training, trained by the same coach or teacher or agent, whatever it might be. And I get something new out of it every time. The reason is you're at a different place in your life or career every time you go to that training. So every time you go, something's going to resonate, and it's going to resonate on where you're at with your career. Yeah. But you're going to hear the same thing 5 different times, but you're going to get something out of it. And every time you go, you're like, oh, I didn't hear that before. Even though they're saying the same thing, it just didn't resonate with you because you didn't need that information at that time.
And I think that and the fact that they're throwing so much out at you that you're only going to be able to retain
1 or 2.
one or two nuggets. A certain percentage.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, the more times you go, you will. You absolutely will.
Absolutely. So I know, Dennis, so you have a son that plays baseball right here up in
Bishop
McLaughlin, right?
Yeah.
And how many kids too?
I have 2. I have a daughter that's 20. That's going to be 21 in March.
Awesome.
And my son is 16. He's going to be 17
Sophomore,
in about
right?
2 weeks. He's actually a junior.
Okay.
He's actually a junior. But yeah, he plays ball up there. He's been playing since he's like 4 years old.
Yeah, Mike coached him a little bit back in the day, right?
Mike Peoples did coach him back in the day, hitting lessons, and all of those lessons from all of those guys over the years have helped, and it's a lot of fun.
Compounded to success.
It's absolutely a lot of fun. I mean, the hardest part is trying to find all the time. I mean, with work and the kids, but I've always said that I'm not going to, if I can help it, I'm not missing a game.
Absolutely.
Because all of this, it's all going by really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And once it's gone, it's gone. So I do everything that I can to make sure that I'm there all the time.
Oh, I agree 100%. And that kind of takes us to our next question, which I know a lot of agents struggle with. I don't think it's anything you ever perfect. I think it's something that you continuously grow at and get better at, and that's work-life balance.
Yeah.
I know starting off it's very difficult. Give some advice to the agents out there who are kind of going full throttle. They want to be like you. They want to deliver the extra customer service. They want to continue to be there. They're always doing what they need to, but they're starting to sacrifice a lot of their own personal time as well as possibly family time obligations. What are some, governors you could put in place to kind of help get that work-life balance and help them set up the proper structure on the front end so that they do get some time for themselves while being able to deliver exceptional service and, succeed at a high level?
For example, if he's got a game, I know what time that game is. And I know that if I've got X amount to do in that day, if I've got to get up an hour early or if I've got to get up 2 hours early, I make sure that, I make sure that that's done so I can do what I want to do, at the end of the day.
So discipline is what I'm hearing.
It's discipline. It really is. It's making sure that you have a schedule, sticking to it, and doing what you got to do to take care of your work. I mean, obviously that's extremely important. The other side is very important too, with your with the kids. I mean, if you have them, or your life balance, if you will.
Prioritizing, just making it a priority.
But discipline is I really feel that way. I start off my days at least 4 days a week working out. And I got to get up early in the morning to do that because I know that I got to be done by a certain time because I know that the phone's going to be ringing at a certain time. And sometimes it rings in the gym at 7:15, 7:30 in the morning. And I do try and respond. But it is discipline, Joe.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think that's the most too. Discipline, I would say sacrifice. Like a lot of times, you got to have the discipline to do it. It can be done. But also that might come with sacrifice. Like, for instance, you might have to go to bed a little bit earlier. So there might have been a happy hour that you typically go to with buddies. You're going to go watch a Thursday night game. Or maybe you're watching a Netflix series or a TV show comes on. And it's like, hey, you know what? I got some priorities. I might have to miss out on that. And then you start to realize, I think, as you continue to grow and you kind of get tunnel vision on what your priorities are, that some of these other nuances or activities you used to partake in don't become as important as they once were.
They're not. And I can't tell you how many times where I knew I had to get up real early in the morning and wasn't able to watch the second half of the football game and went to bed early. But that's you're 100% correct. 100% correct.
Well, that's awesome, Dennis. I appreciate you being a guest on this week's episode of the Real Estate Playbook. For any agent out there who might want to pick your brain on commercial, maybe they want to mentor under you, pick your brain, ask you some questions. For any potential buyers or sellers out there, or maybe leasing, whether it's residential or commercial space, whether they're looking to buy, sell, or lease, why don't you go ahead and tell the viewers, the best number to reach you on and the best email address?
Yeah, the best number to reach me at is 813-382-6754. Once again, 813-382-6754. Email address is easy. It's Dennis with 2 N's at 54realty.com. And I'd be more than happy to help anybody. Any of the agents, I know that a lot of them have reached out. More than happy to help them, try and guide them through, and do what I can to move it along.
Or co-broker deal. Maybe it's somebody outside in the 54 doors that
Yeah.
looking for that guidance. I've even seen where in the commercial space it's more common to kind of co-broke those deals.
Yeah, absolutely it is. It sure is. Be more than happy to help anybody, though.
So awesome. We'll make sure to get all that information posted on our social sites. Once again, we appreciate you being our guest for this week.
Thank you, Joe.
And for the audience out there, take care and have a wonderful day.